to her. She has to talk.
Yeah, I don't think she'll be much.
Oh, sorry.
We'll wait for Bob real quick. We have housekeeping anyway. Pat, can you fire that mic on? Tom or Lynn? Yeah, that, is it red? Oh. Point it.
Right button. Nothing? Try it now.
That's why this new system.
Yeah, it does. Nothing? Let me unplug it and replug it in. Is that the one going over there? Yeah. Now we're good. Don't say anything. I use right here. Congested. Highly. Don't say anything.
All right, you good? We're on the record?
Yep.
The audio works?
Yes.
You using this or not?
No.
Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, at this time we will call our March 22nd, 2022 work session to order. Jamie, could you please read the sunshine notice and call the roll?
Be advised that proper notice has been given by the Township Council in accordance with the Sunshine Law in the following manner. Notice advertised in the Burlington County Times and Camden Courier Post on March 1st, 2022, and posted on the bulletin board on the same date. Mr. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Jenny?
Here.
Ms. Pareo?
Here.
Mr. Lyon?
Here.
Mr. Burrell?
Here. Thank you, Jamie. First up, we have our minutes for approval. I'll entertain a motion approving the minutes for November 9, 2021 public meeting.
Motion?
Second.
Jamie, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Jenny?
Aye.
Ms. Pareo?
Aye.
Mr. Lyon?
Aye.
Mr. Burrell?
Aye. The ayes have it. Motion carries. Next up, Resolution 2022-60, authorizing additional funding to CME Associates for affordable housing planning services. I'll get a motion in a second.
So moved, Tom Lyon.
Second.
Who wants that?
I'll take it.
Okay, great. Jamie, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Jenny?
Aye.
Ms. Pareo?
Aye.
Mr. Lyon?
Aye.
Mr. Burrell?
Aye. The ayes have it. Resolution is adopted. Next up is Resolution 2022-61, authorizing the execution and adoption of the settlement agreement, mutual release between the Township of Delran and Patrick Duff. Can you get a motion in a second?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Jamie, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Jenny?
Aye.
Ms. Pareo?
Aye.
Mr. Lyon?
Aye.
Mr. Burrell?
Aye. The ayes have it. Resolution's adopted. Next up is Resolution 2022-62, authorizing 2021 budget transfers.
Motion. I'll
Okay.
second.
Second. Great. Jamie, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Jenny?
Aye.
Ms. Pareo?
Aye.
Mr. Lyon?
Aye.
Mr. Burrell?
Aye. The ayes have it. Resolution is adopted. Next up is our consent agenda, which includes Resolution 2022-63 and Resolution 2022-64. Are there any objections to the items within the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved, Tom Lyon. Second.
Jamie, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Jenny?
Aye.
Ms. Pareo?
Aye.
Mr. Lyon?
Aye.
Mr. Burrell?
Aye. The ayes have it. Consent agenda passes, and so do the resolutions therein. Next up, we have motions. Can I get a motion authorizing the payment of bills, including all purchases made in the cooperative purchasing agreement?
I'll make a motion.
A second, please.
Second.
Jamie, could you call the roll?
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Jenny?
Aye.
Ms. Pareo?
Aye.
Mr. Lyon?
Aye.
Mr. Burrell?
Aye. Ayes have it. The motion carries. So now into our work session items. We got two quick items before we get to the budget. First up is our COVID relief sewer payment plan. This is required by law. So Jamie, are you going to take this one? Or Joe?
Do you want me to just?
Yeah,
take-
go
Okay.
right ahead.
Okay, so, Senate Bill 8.1, required municipalities to institute a COVID-19 utility ratepayer relief measures. So we outlined, the tax collector outlined, 1 through 9. These are the suggestions for implementing the plan. If anyone has any questions about it. One thing you will need to decide on is to allow payment plans moving forward. This would be for 2020 fourth quarter and 2021 sewer that's outstanding. And so the payment plans can be 12 or 24 months, so that's a decision that has to be made. And whether you're going to waive the interest, which the tax collector is recommending. It's hard to compound interest when you're doing a payment plan. And then whether you're going to approve these payment plans by individual resolution, or if you want to just authorize the tax collector to review them and make
Yeah. So I think first up you said is 12 or 24 months, right? Is the first decision?
Yeah.
What does she recommend? Does she, or what do you guys recommend? Is there any,
well, she's recommending not to exceed 24 months.
Yeah, I think it's a little overkill. Any thoughts from members of council? 12 or 24?
I did have one question, on the 12 to 24.
Go ahead.
I had a question on, when it was considered, I'm just looking for the item here, when it considered late, I think we need to say how late. I mean, it doesn't specify a week, a month.
Yeah, what do we consider late? Just the day after, right? Jamie?
Well, no. If for sewer, they have 30 days from the due date.
So Lynn, this is an additional to that policy, so we're just crafting correct me if I'm wrong, the payment plan policy that would go on top. So after that grace period hits for whatever that may be, for those payments, then they would have this option to enter this payment plan.
Right, well, once they're on this payment plan, if they do not keep up with their agreement, it doesn't say how long they have before.
Oh, if they're late within the
within
payment
the
plan.
agreement, yeah.
Do you know that answer, Jamie, by chance?
Um,
Once they're on the payment
It
plan.
says on number 7, it says, in the payment plan, as long as the agreement is adhered to in a timely manner. Well, timely manner isn't very specific.
Yeah.
I mean,
So,
if it's
yeah.
30 days on our standard,
Grace
maybe that's what we should put in there, but I think something has to be in there to define what's considered late.
Yeah, that does not outline that in this, but I would assume that once the payment plan is put in place, there's no grace period on the payment plan. So if the payment plan is the 15th of the month and it's not paid on the 15th of the month or by the 15th of the month, then it would be late.
Right, well, then if I'm a resident, I come back and say, well, yeah, but I paid you 30 days late, but it was a timely manner, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I'm just saying, I don't think it's smart to leave it open-ended.
No, we would strike the timely manner and then due on that due date.
Yeah,
If
okay.
it's the first, then if it's not there on the first, it's late. After you're in the payment plan, because if you give a 30-day
Yeah,
grace within the payment plan,
Current sewer is not in the payment plan, so they
Right.
can't add current
Right,
2022 sewer moving forward. This is pre-March 15th.
right, making up for what they owe.
Right.
yeah.
Right. All right, I just, again.
So-
And current also has to stay current as part of the payment plan.
Right, well, I
So
saw
if they're
that, yeah.
delinquent on current sewer, then that
Right,
also
I saw
voids
that.
the plan.
Okay, so we'll just clarify that and that strike the timely and say it's due on that due date. It's not there, it's not there.
Seems like that would lead right into number 8.
Yeah.
That would put them in default of the payment plan.
Yes,
Right.
yeah, you get one shot at it once you're in the payment plan. So good catch on that. And then, so the question is 12 or 24? Is there, I think if you're in the payment plan, people may need the 24.
Right, so if
So-
you're okay, we'll, as long as it doesn't exceed 24.
Yeah.
We'll keep it
Up
up to
yeah,
24,
Okay, so we'll go up to, and what was the other thing?
the interest.
The interest, yeah, so the main thing about the interest, as Jamie explained, was that it's very hard to capitalize the interest over the payment plan period, so it's just easier to waive it. And other towns are doing that, right? You said that have instituted
Yeah,
this.
there's no problem, yeah, if we get paid, that's fine.
Yeah.
We have a pandemic we're dealing with, so
Yeah.
I think it's reasonable.
Okay, so we'll waive the interest fee once they enter in the payment plan. Everybody okay with that? Okay.
So we'll probably put this policy in place, and if you're okay, we'll do one general resolution at the next meeting that will just outline the requirements. And then, you know, are you gonna be okay with the tax collector approving the plans, or do we need to come back with individual plans? It's gonna be up to the resident to submit their plan to us for review. Do you want the tax collector handle the review, or do you want to handle the review council on a case-by-case basis?
Tom?
Well, tax collector, their discretion.
Yeah, unless there's something
And
that,
we'll put that in the resolution too.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it.
yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Okay, any questions, further questions from council? All right, great, so that'll be on the next agenda. Great. Next up, we have, I wanted to get this in place, the fire inspection fees. This is just a quick discussion about it, so we can have Eileen or our next attorney start to draft it. So Joey, I'm gonna put you on the spot, you're here. He sent us this letter about updating the fees.
Yeah.
You just wanna come up and, just real quick,
Yeah, so.
just state your name and address for the record if you don't mind. We all know who you are, but. Thanks, Joe.
Joey Cunningham, 900 Chester Avenue, Fire District Office. So what we're looking to do, we believe so the state defines fire, life hazard fees, and then it's up to the local municipalities to define non-life hazard fees. So, currently, our non-life hazard fees were sitting last adjusted in 2003. So as you can imagine, we're pretty far behind on the ball. Getting the fees caught up, and some of the, I have the proposal right here, the fees for common housing inspections, which is our, fire safety inspection we do for houses. The permit fees, we had defined prices in 2003. Well, now the state defines, housing fees as well as permit fees.
Yeah.
So we wanted to have that change just to match the state code. So as the state changes the fees, it doesn't require us to go back and open up the ordinance again and change it. It'll just be in suit with whatever the state's requiring. And then we wanted to bring the non-life hazard fees up to just where all the other, all the towns are ranging in the $100 and up range, when we were still in the low 20s for a single inspection, it's costing like $22. So we just wanted to bring that up to current rates.
Yeah. But we did this with the new construction code official, right? He came in, same thing, Gary sat with him and went through, he prepared a memo and same process, right? I don't think that was updated in 10 years, so.
Yeah, it's been a while since.
Yeah. So, council, and we have any questions for Joe or anything? I think it makes sense. We updated it. We can instruct our legal counsel to begin that process. It's gonna take 2 months to eventually amend it, but then we'll be in good shape.
Sure. And then, lastly, we had in there to, create a permit for trailers, sea boxes, pods for the use of storage. Because we're starting to see more and more businesses are running out of room inside their establishments. So they're just putting external storage facilities on site in the form of 53-foot tractor trailers, pods, sea boxes, and stuff like that. So it's gonna be a permit fee per storage unit for them to have them. And then that'll give us the ability to come in and inspect that just like we would their business to make sure that there's no immediate fire hazards with that.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Council, everybody okay with that?
Yep.
All right, that's pretty easy. So we'll, so I don't know if Eileen will be around long. We can either wait, but we'll just instruct our solicitor to begin drafting the amendment to the ordinance. Okay?
I'd like to, before we even get to that point, I'd like to go over, sit down and go over all of that with you, along with Bill too. I just want to get a good feel on the, what's permitted and what isn't permitted, particularly in residential property.
Sure. The permits, as far as fire department, I don't believe that we permit, the only thing we would really permit is like fire permits. I think the permits for residential, you would get more from construction.
No, I'm not suggesting that you're affecting,
Okay.
It's just the whole idea.
Sure.
Applies itself.
Sure.
So.
Understandable.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Great.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Joe. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. All right, so everyone knows our marching orders with that one?
Yes.
Great, thank you, Joe, appreciate that. Yeah. Yeah, so before we jump into the budget, it's marked item D, but it's the Riverside Memorial Day Parade. Jamie, you have some information with that, or is it in the,
It's in the packet, but it'll be Monday, May 30th at 9:30 a.m. in Riverside. What we've done in the past is march in the parade and provide a wreath at the memorial. If that's what you plan for this year, then I can fill out the form, the participation form, and send it back.
yeah, we do that,
Point to, value of veterans as well.
that's great. Yeah, we've been doing that for,
Typically,
Yeah.
The electeds, take up a collection amongst ourselves, for the re, no cost to the taxpayers.
great,
Budget, budget, I might as well make that clear.
I will
great.
send that out.
Okay, yeah, if you could do that, that'd be great. All right, next up is our big item of the night, is the 2022 budget discussion, so we're gonna jump right into it. It's your budget, go ahead.
Sure, so, you know, it's a pleasure to be able to, present this. Everyone knows that, we've run into some increased costs, certainly the municipal, solid waste, the trash contract, has been well publicized. And, certainly it's been caused by increased labor costs and staffing issues and reduced competitive bids. But I'm gonna ask Joe to talk more about that in a minute. From some of the highlights of this budget are that I'm proposing to council that we add 2 public works laborers to accommodate the continuously growing workload. We actually have less workers than we had before Summer Hill, the Grand, and Delray Community Park. We all know that they do leaf and branch collection, they do park and field maintenance. We're looking to upgrade in the budget some of the fields, actually Friendship Park's basketball and Brown Street ball field renovation, and the usual stuff that they do. They do a lot of things, buildings and grounds, and everyone knows that the Delray Public Works have a gold standard in snow removal. So we're looking to, I'm proposing that we add 2 additional laborers starting in July, because by the time we get the budget done, we might as well start at the halfway point. As far as touching on the police department, we're not actually adding officers, but kind of replenishing those vacancies that need to be filled in order to get back to the existing number that we had in the past. And I'd also like to include the community policing initiative to improve community relations and outreach. And this will help us continue with our goals of positive contact with the police and hopefully increase recruitment interest in that. Hopefully the public will consider law enforcement as a desired career. Everyone knows that we have our wonderful interim administrator, but the search for permanent administrator increases some cost with that. They are included in this budget, and we have the benefit of a full-time communications director now, who worked on a part-time basis last year and only paid for half of that year. But as you can see, our responses are much quicker and more informative and in-depth, and finally coordinated with the other departments. We have all the standard stuff included. Everything's increased, of course. Pensions, insurance, legal fees, utility costs, gasoline. But I am very proud to deliver a budget that provides better services and potentially, if all goes well in this evening's discussion, no municipal tax increase. For the last 11 years, this council and I have had 5 years with no tax increase and 2 years with an actual decrease. And for the last 3 years, including this year and last year, which were the first 2 budgets of my term, 0 tax increase. Hopefully we've included everything in there. And by the way, for those who are keeping score at home, we're presenting a sewer budget that for the 12th year in a row has no rate increase. I want to thank the department heads, our CFO Karima, who's with us, our interim administrator Joe Belina for coming in the middle of the process and wrestling this budget to the ground with me. But now I'd like to turn this over to our council and to Joe, and welcome Bob Marone, our auditor, who is here to help us as we no longer have Jeff here with historical data. So, Tyler,
Great.
wherever you.
Thank you, Mayor, appreciate it. Joe, do you have any additions you want to talk about before we jump into the department sections?
No, there's one section and relatively minor, but I've been in discussion and received an email from Deb, I'm not gonna attempt the last name,
Hammond, yeah.
on the green team, of inserting, I think it was about 3,500 to 4,000 for tree work, maybe putting a tree plan together with our engineer during the course of the year. And so I'd like you folks to consider that.
Yeah.
We spoke earlier today, as a matter of fact,
Okay.
this afternoon.
Great.
So
We'll note that. I have a note here, so we'll add when we get to that
Okay.
section.
I think if, Mr. President, if you don't mind, maybe we just rifle through department
think
by
so.
department.
Yep.
And I'll highlight some of the differences that,
Let's do that,
the
yeah.
mayor touched on. Okay?
Absolutely, yeah. So we'll go through department by department. I'll just go through Joe and then pivot to you, council, if there's any questions about it. Joe will jump in. If there's anything that's worth noting, we'll note it for us. Council can then ask any questions. We won't go exactly line by line as we did with the ruler before. We'll kind of keep, because most of the stuff hasn't changed, so.
No, it's not.
So it's not worth our time to do that. So first up, so council, just jump in at any point. As the mayor mentioned, we have Karima who's joining us, CFO. We have Bob here as well. So we have all the important people in the room if there's any questions.
Right.
Okay.
To piggyback off of what you said with the green team,
Yes.
I know I've been in communication with the Historical Society, and we're trying to figure out, they have so much stuff and no place to display it, store it. We've been looking at some options of possibly storing some of it here and creating a display in the lobby, whether it's contained in one area or whatnot. And I think that's gonna, from the standpoint of display cases, cabinets or whatnot. So I was hoping that we could insert something into the budget to kickstart that, because it won't be a continuous outlay. But I was hoping we could get into the budget a $10,000 line item for this particular year, that we could get those cabinets and whatnot. And I don't anticipate it being $10,000, but it probably would be 5 to 10. So somewhere in here, we could dedicate $10,000 for the Historical Society, because it's all being stored in somebody's garage. And they have some really cool stuff, but it's not anywhere where the residents can display it.
Can see it, yeah.
And there is a lot of opportunity to display in the lobby and on the walls or something like that. So I think it'd be a good thing, because they've been laboring a long time with this kind of stuff.
Well, it's okay with the council. I'll work it out with Bob and what have you, and, you know, we'll provide. There is a worksheet for this course.
Okay.
However, I didn't include it in the book because there's been no activity there, but I think it was back like 5 years, there hasn't been anything at all.
Yeah.
So, but we'll dope that out.
I think it's well, so Tom and I attended the meeting with them, and we've been in contact about it. I think it's a good idea. They have all this work they're doing for the township. I mean, this is not to benefit themselves, it's to benefit the citizens in the township. So you might as well bear the fruits of that labor, right?
And they're all volunteers.
Exactly. Yeah. So Tom, I don't have any objection to that. Members of council have any, Lynn, you all right with that?
Oh,
Okay. Okay, cool. So, all right, so first up in our main section here, I'm on page 1 of 14. Everyone have this document? Okay, great. So first up is the business administrative section. Joe, is there anything worth noting?
No, I think the mayor summarized it just fine. We have 2 increases really. As the mayor indicated, you're pursuing the hiring of a permanent business administrator. We also included funding under, let's see here, under 258 in my particular budget for a management software system to streamline operations. some of these companies that provide are called GovConnect, GovPilot, and what have you. And all operations would have to be hands-on deck in the development of something like this. So that's been talked about in the past. And you'll see something too in the UCC budget when we get to it.
Okay.
But that's it for the business administrator.
Thanks, Joe. Any questions or comments from council? None? Okay. Next up is mayor and council budget. I don't think anything's changed there, right?
The only thing, I mean, the net effect is pretty much the same.
Yeah.
But it does reflect the benefit of having the full-time communications worker. However, there was really almost the same decrease in line item 299, which was just miscellaneous. I just brought it down to what it had been, in year 2020.
Yep.
I think 2021 might have been, it looked like it was just a separate year. So.
Yep. Gotcha.
Okay.
Great. Questions from council? None?
If I could,
Go ahead.
Mr. President, going forward, like a municipal clerk, tax collector, tax assessor, a lot of these are your service departments that service your operating departments. And most of these are really, they stay stable throughout the course of, over, as it transcends budget periods. So, but, if you want to go through them, we should.
So, Joe, what are those? The municipal clerk, treasurer,
Tax
bureau
collector,
collections,
tax assessor, finance. Finance, I will point out, one thing, under the auditor miscellaneous, the full disclosure, I upped that a little bit in both the OE, also for sewer. It would be a benefit to the, to the new administrator. This is a, case by case basis. Maybe that, we're not gonna need extra services from the auditor, but if we do, I'd like to have some funding there too. Again, both sewer utility and in the operating.
Yeah. Well, especially if there's somebody new coming in, right? They may
Right.
need that institutional knowledge that
Right.
Bob brings with us.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that municipal clerk, treasurer, Bureau of Assessments, Bureau of Collections, right?
Yep.
Page 1 and 2, is there any questions with those from council? As Joe put, there's really not much, it's pretty standard stuff there.
He answered my question.
Good, okay.
And one thing on the auditor, the reason I thought that, I mean, Bob is a great help to me, and he got us here tonight, so I think it'd be good to have for the next person.
Great, all right, thank you. Joe, so next up at the bottom here is some of her, right, page 2, is some of her professional services. Township solicitor, township engineer, DDA.
Oh yeah, that was in my unit of the, my department. I put some of that there.
Okay.
Sure, let's go through that.
I mean, my one question, Joe, is considering personnel matters that we've had. Labor Council's been used more frequently recently. I mean, do we need to prepare, we have sufficient money to do what we need to do in the next?
With that in mind, I had increased it by $10,000.
Okay, so it was.
So, yeah, I think the funding item last year was $150,000. I upped it to $160,000.
For general solicitor, is that where that's at?
Well, yeah, was it 140 or 150? Thank you, Serena. It was 140 to 150.
Okay, good. Just want to make sure we're relying on Labor Council, which is good, so we want to make sure that. All right, this is where the historian section is. I think that's fine with 2. I mean, I don't know where we put the 10,000, but I'll leave that up to you guys to decide.
Are you going by the line item, not the worksheet?
I'm going by this.
Gotcha, okay. All right, very well. Okay.
The other thing that happens with the senior club is the chairman of the RAC is here, but the senior club gets money and it's routed through the RAC, so that, I think, Colin, you sign off on those POs, so that's another way there can be oversight in the Historical Society. So I'll let you guys, administration, decide where that goes. Okay. So that clears page 2, right? Any other questions on 2? All right, next up, we can go through this whole page 3. This is planning, zoning, and uniform construction, right? Joe, is there anything there that's worth noting?
No, just the one thing I'll point out with the Uniform Construction Code, Bill might be looking for a permit record system of updating that a little bit. But we'll get into that once the budget's adopted a little more. He's
Okay.
really, he's looked at a couple but he's not prepared to submit anything.
Okay.
Yet.
Any questions from council for that's all of page 3? Pretty standard. Just hearing nothing, so that is a good sign. Okay, next is page 4. Before we get to police, just above that, that's all of our insurance items. As the mayor mentioned earlier, we anticipate increases with that, just the nature of that. So, any questions related to the insurance items there? Joe, we're all good with that?
No, yeah, absolutely. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
No, you're good. If I don't hear anything, I'm just gonna keep rolling, so jump
The
in.
one thing I will mention on insurance that we're gonna have to prepare is the cybersecurity plan, which
Yeah.
became a recently a requirement. There are 3 tiers for it, and with the passage of each tier, and each tier has to be approved via a resolution, it puts, downward pressure on your exposure. So we'll be working on that this year as soon as we get through this budget.
Great.
That'll be goal 1.
Great,
And
thank
I've
you.
already been in touch with the JIF and the folks that handled the cyber part of it, and we're probably gonna be meeting within the next 2 weeks.
Okay, great, thank you. So next big item is our police department. It's bottom of page 4 and into page 5. As the mayor mentioned, we are hiring some more officers.
We're hiring replacement officers. We're not
Replacement.
adding to the table of organization at all. We have
Well said.
5 vacancies pretty much. We think we may have 1 coming forth by way of a transfer. But we're still going through that. There'll be a new test soon in the spring.
Yeah.
So hopefully this year we'll achieve that.
Okay. Questions from council?
A couple things I'd like to point out with the
Go ahead,
police
please.
department, if you would. There's a 5,000 for the police community policing initiative that the mayor talked about. And of course, vehicle repairs. There's increase in mileage, replacing only 2 cars a year, so that adds pressure on the repair costs, and plus they're increasing. And you'll hear that again in Public Works when we get to that. Under the radio repairs, the chief had asked for an increase, but we can keep it at 4,000 if we buy a new repeater system, as we have proposed in capital. The low band communications they're not as clear and crisp as they should, as they are the high band. But by putting a repeater system on a roof at a high point someplace in town, it will certainly increase the communication single stream. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Joe, still a quick question.
Yes.
So with the budget for the police, do we have them going like for half a year as well? Like we were looking at for the public works?
No, we kept them in for the full year, right? Yeah, no, we played them for the full year.
Okay.
Yeah, because we didn't know which way they were coming, if they're gonna cut it off with a civil service list, or we're gonna get a transfer over.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, if we get a transfer right, they start relatively soon compared to
Yeah,
civil
they
service.
do. They'll have to go through the field training period.
Yeah.
As every new officer would, but we have to buy their uniform still. And depending on how far along that officer was from that other jurisdiction, we may have to recompense them for their training costs. So that's why that's up a little bit, as you'll see.
All right, great.
And as far as finally the vehicle purchase, it contemplates replacement of 2 frontline vehicles, and the price increase reflects that which the vendors told us.
And fun, point to note about that, we cannot capitalize those because their useful life is below, what, 5 years? Right, Bob? So been through a couple of these, so that's
That's right.
a good fun. Yeah,
The command vehicles are different.
yeah, they're longer.
Yeah, as you'll see, yep.
Yep, good, okay. Great. Any other questions with police? Nope. Okay, next up, emergency management, there's nothing changes there, that's standard. So any questions with those items above the streets and roads? So emergency management, EMS and municipal prosecutor,
That was good.
council. Okay, next up, we have streets and roads. Anything here I should note? Joe?
Well, the two additional staff members that, laborers that, the mayor has suggested, of course, that's for July 1st. We have a vacancy. The other day, somebody resigned to seek employment elsewhere. So so if you approve that, we've got 3 positions to fill.
Okay.
And a lot running through the public works budget, streets and roads, the recycling part, the buildings and grounds.
Yeah,
A
that's
lot
on
of it
page
is just,
5.
it reflects increase in prices and demand on getting the supplies and equipment. But other than that.
Yeah, that's a good point, just so, yeah, so that's, we're at the bottom of page 5, and then it goes into page 6, is recycling, trash, building and grounds. Any,
The recycling salary full-time. Is that, I didn't know that.
that's half of what this is.
That's on page 6.
139 to 142, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's somebody in public works that's just charged it.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, so now I'm on page 6, so we did recycling, trash, buildings and grounds.
Did you want to talk about the trash collection just a little bit?
You just want to, for the record, yeah, sure.
I think it should. Since the spread of COVID, the rate of pay for workers has increased astronomically. Truck drivers normally receive a $10,000 bonus in order to drive a truck. A municipal driver, they command up to $80,000 a year. The helpers on the truck went from 14 to 15 an hour to 20 to 25 an hour since COVID. It takes a year and a half to 2 years to get a truck built, ordered, built, and delivered. Companies are not seeking the workers. They can only complete 90% of their current contracts that they're carrying now. Fuel costs obviously have impacted the cost. And there's been a consolidation of the trash collection industry in the south here, and there's far fewer bidders and less competitive.
Yeah.
So that's what yielded what you got stuck with this year.
And it's significantly more difficult now to get your CDL. They put new rules in place.
I'm glad you reminded me of that.
Yeah, because that's going to be a cost to us when we bring in the 2 new laborers. I've been working with some folks from a county standpoint of possibly consolidating. I know in Camden County, Cherry Hill is going to create their own training program, and once it gets off the ground and they get the kinks worked out of it, they may actually train for other towns in Camden County or maybe outside, because it used to be you'd be able to just bring the guy in, you have a CDL driver, they train you, as long as you go down and pass the test, boom. Now you have to go to the accredited program. And if you send it out, it's thousands of dollars, or you gotta create your own, or the county has to create your own.
It's anywhere from $3,500 to $5,000. And when you advertise for a labor position, I mean, it's low level. We've always required your CDL drivers to have, it's a tough ask to have somebody, at the bottom of the scale to come in with a CDL. So that's something that I think we're gonna have to talk about during the course of the year as to whether or not we want to require a CDL, prefer it, pay for their training. The Jeff also brought that up at their meeting last Tuesday as well, that they're looking at some options too to provide training for this, because this is very expensive. This would be, like you said, $200. You could train down at the yard and now, so.
And if you're going to require somebody to walk through the door with a CDL, you're gonna have to pay more, because they're tripping over each other to hire. I mean, we can't get them in certain industries. They're just short drivers.
The garbage guys, they can't get it. So.
And one of the things with the garbage vehicles, the one-armed bandits, they are high maintenance. So if they need a lot of TLC, and so you need extra trucks, because they have to work on them and whatnot.
Yeah.
So it has, over, what we see as Teamsters, it's gotten increasingly expensive and cumbersome to make it happen.
Yeah. All right, so, we're good with that. Next, at the bottom of page 6, this is really, those 4 items, stormwater, health, environmental, dog regulation. Any questions with that? I don't think so, so. We'll go to page 7. This is, the recreation side, recreation RAC budget. Mayor, I know you said something about requests for more money with that on.
Does that make it into these numbers? We talked about a slight increase for RAC.
No, I don't have it here. Probably have to be one of the add-ons. I'll work it out with Bob.
Okay, so we can add on, I think, request was what, 5?
Yeah, it was.
Can we do that? Council, are we okay with that? The, similar in nature to a lot of the theme, we're talking about the price of services, gas and things like that. It's not reducing, so.
It was one of those small items that we talked
Yes.
about them.
Council okay with that? Any questions with the REC otherwise? Seeing none, all right. The next page, these are all like, so prior bills, green team, other expenses, that's not the green team's budget, is it?
Yeah.
Is that the
Is
green
it?
team? Well, that's the only line item for the
So-
green team, right?
For the green team, Joe, that's, you were talking about, they requested additional money for,
I believe it was 4,000. I don't
Okay.
have the emails on my desk. I apologize.
okay. Does council have any objection to that? I mean, the green team has been doing a lot of work, so I think we should, yeah, you know, they need the money to be active and so working with Jim, so appreciate it. Yes, okay, so is there any questions on the rest of page 7? Joe, is there anything I'm missing on the rest of that page? A lot of
I
one-liners, but,
see that really, no.
okay, council? Virginia, you all right? Okay. Page 8.
For the most part,
Bunch of grants, right?
oh yeah, I'm sorry. Because they come throughout the course of the year. We show a couple that we received thus far. The safe and secure, that's always like one of the first ones to get, right? But they come throughout the year, you'll see them, you know, through resolutions. and whatnot.
Okay.
Yeah,
Any-
the reimbursement grants, right? Yeah.
We just gotta have them in there, right? So, any questions on page 8? This is the portion of the budget where everything gets one-liners. Next is page 9, another grant type page, right, Joe? And then there's municipal court. Anything we should note on that, Joe? That's at the
No,
bottom?
not at all. No, she runs a
Okay.
clean ship over there.
Yeah, she does.
She really does. You know, you passed over the utilities, and I think this mention should be made that for gasoline, we're gonna reflect an increase of about $25,000 over last year.
Mhm.
But all the other utilities, based on historical use, I think we're gonna be okay. Telephone had a small increase of a few $1,000s only,
Mhm.
but we should be okay throughout the
Okay.
course of the year.
Great. Actually, had a phone call today from Schneider Electric, who we've heard about before. So they're interested in doing some solar panel options, so we'll bring it to council in the near future, but we may be able to get that down in a
Well,
couple
the
years.
grant that you approved at the last council meeting for, through the state of New Jersey, Jim and I have been talking about, we put the $10,000 for which we applied was to really study the possibility of a new roof with the potential for solar panels here too.
Maybe we can work with those guys.
So,
We'll talk offline
oh,
about
yeah,
that.
when it comes
Yeah.
time to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nowhere near there though.
And we have the new person at PSE&G that's our contact.
Yeah, she wants to come meet with us.
And I have a litany of
Is it
lights
this
that
one?
are out. You know, walking at night, I find all the tags. I have a list to send over.
Yeah.
That'll
Okay.
be our way of saying hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi, by the way,
Screen honor.
we pay for the light anyway, right?
Yeah.
We pay for the light, we might as well have it.
We had the one on the street, my wife told they were out the next day.
Really? Maybe we can have your wife call.
What I'm saying is, I don't, you know, it doesn't have to necessarily.
If you wanna give me just give me the list of numbers, you can go on the website and punch right in.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I have a bunch.
Okay, so, One thing Bob did mention, so Bob, if you want to touch base on it, or Joe, just about pension, can we just talk about pension increasing real quick? That was on page 7, I believe. I'm going
Sure,
back.
yeah,
I hate
the
to go back,
pension,
but
Both,
thanks, Bob.
well, the public employees didn't go up as drastic, but there was quite a substantial increase in police and fire pension this year. I believe it was over $100,000. So that's always one of those fixed costs
Yeah, you can't.
that you must abide by, yes.
It's an ongoing cost, you pay as you go, basically. However, in your audit report, there's a large unfunded liability that we make reference to in the footnote. Because of your accounting, you're basically cash basis, you don't record that, but your neighbors next door and, with a fire district and or the school district, they do. So, their statements are affected by that. Yours aren't, but you do have an unfunded pension liability, to be aware of.
Okay.
It's that number that is out there, that
Yeah.
at the end of, you have to pay it. You just keep going. So that's why you're on a pay-as-you-go basis based on the actuaries' projections at the state.
Pension crisis continues. Yeah, I wrote a paper about it in law school. Final paper. All right, so we're back on page 8. Any questions with page 8? That's all grants, right? Seeing none, we'll go to page 9. Oh, that we were there. I'm sorry, we went back. That's my bad. So municipal court, they run a clean court. We don't have to do anything about that. Next page is page 10.
Let me just jump back to the court. I just want to alert you on something. The state office of the courts, they were out to do their annual inspection 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. I think in the report they may address some safety issues, in the court with respect to the type of glass that's there. They may make some recommendations, so that's something that we're probably talk about in the future budget.
Well, the office of the court can fund that.
Well,
State won't be
the last
opening up
couple
their
of years,
checkbook.
no.
Yeah, I
So,
figured that. No, but anything we
Right.
can do to make sure,
yeah.
they're safe, so we'll look forward to that.
Yeah, revenue courts in all towns.
Yeah, just,
Well, now they're opening up now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So we'll track that for the next couple of months to see what's.
with COVID, while there, nothing was happening.
Yeah, you could go 90 or 295.
They were good days, weren't they?
How do you know that?
Right.
Stay away from Tom on the road.
No, I was being paid.
Oh, okay. Good. All right. So, all right, the courts, then page 10, public defender, that's standard, and a bunch of miscellaneous items. There's nothing on there to note, right, Joe? Page 10?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Questions from council, that page? Okay. Next is page 11. We'll just go by this whole page. This is, what's that? These are all zeros?
These are all zeros, right? So
Good.
you can jump ahead to 12, bottom of 12.
Why are these all zero? Are they just
It was in my notes, why are you over that?
10?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this was because we have the old sewer authority and we no longer use.
Oh, okay, so
Those
these-
numbers.
This is the old sewer authority.
They just go another page or two and then you're with the current numbers.
Yeah, you go to the bottom of page 12.
Okay, so 11 was the easiest page of the day. Now we're on page 12. So this is when the sewer starts to kick in, right?
That is correct.
Okay. So, Tom, you have a question?
Salary charge, 2020.
Let's see. Yes. Okay, there's what that reflects is a portion of salaries of the administrator, the clerk, the finance officer, because we do work
Oh, yeah.
for that.
Got it. Got it.
So we do the bidding for the sewer department, we do their purchasing, we do their payroll, all that.
So in the 2020 date was.
I think it was the date that you actually started.
Okay.
If you could see, If you look at your budget workbook, you'll see that the first year that there was a charge against it was in 2020.
Okay.
So it was probably the line item that we tagged back then, that's all it is.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember
They
Jeff.
say there's no stupid questions, so
Keep them in line though, Mayor Kareem, he has to. Okay, good. Good point, Joe, thank you. So then on 13 is the rest of that sewer items.
The only thing I could call out there that's out of the usual, under 224 item, they need $8,000 to replace the surveillance system at the sewer plant. Just this past, I guess it was last month, right, Karina, where there was the 3 catalytic converters were stolen from our 3 dumps out there, so dump trucks, I should say. And the cameras were little of no consequence to help us. So we'd like to replace that. And just below it, under motor vehicles, are the vehicle that we use to service our pump stations. It's not young, it's probably about 8, 9 years old. Or we need to replace the lift gate and utility body. The truck's in fine shape. So Joe would like to have that. There's a see, under lab analysis, I think we're showing an increase in that. And that's all driven by DEP regulations as well.
They have a lot more regulations on, and
yes, we should have a habit of that.
They never take away, it always adds. Okay, so is there any other questions with page 13?
contract services, I have a note on that, did that go up?
Contract services for sewer? Who knows that? I'm way past that. Way past that.
I'm sorry, I'm slow.
Oh, it's really for repair parts and supplies for,
So that's
for the
not
sewer
just,
plant.
that's not only if we can't repair something, it's for parts.
It's for parts primarily, and it reflects what we think they're gonna be an increase in cost like everything else, so. that's what
Yeah.
that is.
Okay.
There's a couple of items in there, though, that address like some of the work that municipal maintenance will do for us. Actually, we held steady on that. That's item 350. That's like 156,000. So there's some big repairs that there's.
Yeah, there's certain jobs
We cannot handle.
Yeah.
Item 231.
231.
We have an actual like 35,000 and we're budgeting 75. We've been budgeting 75.
But that's chemicals that get you, you're right. Joe and I talked about that, whenever we're subject to whims of the marketplace, I guess.
Yeah,
We would feel more
fluctuates.
comfortable with keeping that in there. So, if you want us to take another look at it, I'd be more than glad to.
Well, it might be a place to find that 10,000.
Okay.
I'm just saying, that, our average over the 5-year period is probably about less than 40,000.
It's true, but yeah, we never really moved it down since that high point 2018
This is sewer, right?
sewer.
Sewer budget, so we wouldn't be able to move it to municipal. He's good. He's good.
Yeah, if you just take another.
He knows his way around this book pretty well.
Jeff, you just want to take a look at that and then either
We will.
reaffirm that that's what you want or.
Sure.
That'd be great. Any other questions with sewer? Okay, we'll go to page 14, which I think is of little consequence. Any questions on 14? Then just while we have Bob here, I just think it's worth noting. Gary, did you mention about like how much generally for the administration, Bob can answer, or Gary or Joe, but how much of the surplus is used to balance the budget and how is the surplus holding up? And I think it's important to conceptualize that for council.
Sure, I can let, Bob get into the weeds, but we use a percentage of surplus, which is not inconsistent with what we've been doing over the last 4 or 5 years. maybe one year it was up a few points, down a few points the next, but it's pretty much, relatively stable throughout. And Bob, if you want to drill down.
I'll just agree with you, that's right. In each audit, you get a 5-year historical data as to where the percentage that you're using. And the approach that was done with this budget from Joe and from the mayor was to keep the percentage consistent.
Right in the low 40%.
Yes, yeah. So some of these adjustments that you talked about tonight may be filtered in through the use of surplus, which would still stay within your percentage.
Okay,
And it has been sustaining.
we're in a good spot.
Without a problem.
Right.
Good.
And it was a benefit back in a couple of years ago when you went to bonds, the bond rating agencies looked at it very favorable with the township. Very favorable.
Well, a lot of people are always concerned about surplus and how much surplus we have. And this is a great example of how that surplus is used to benefit the residents for a zero tax increase, to help that zero tax increase.
Yeah, it is especially important at the height of the pandemic, because if we lost tax revenues, there were some towns in the state that did not have nearly enough surplus to survive. And so they're in some tough spots.
Smart money management.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so that's the operating budget, right? Now we'll take a look at our capital items.
Sure.
So that's in the back of our budget book for folks who have that.
Maybe we can do is go over the projects.
Yeah, just hit on them.
The projects that Bob can walk us through. I've got the state budget sheets here.
Okay.
I want to go through just the projects.
Yeah, we like
without
that.
getting into, they're not as easy to follow as just
Yeah, we like these.
words on a piece of paper. The road improvement program, if you recall, we discussed at a council meeting about a month ago. So we pretty much took your marching orders from there on that. The next page, other capital improvements. The outfall construction, Leon and Third, Jim and I were called out there, I guess pretty much like my first week here, and there was a huge erosion. The pipe, Lord knows where that pipe is, that broke right at the baseline. So that's got to be repaired. And I think some of these other projects in the first section here, we've already talked about. The Army Corps Stream Bank, the Bikeway Grant Project. Mayor, you've brought these up before. The New Jersey Safe Streets to Transit Program over here on Chester, 130, that's been talked about. And some of the other,
Sorry, we lost that one. 1 minute.
you need the phone number?
Nope,
No,
we
we
got it
don't.
back.
So, some of the other projects, listening to Brian, folks around town, Jim, the Brown Street baseball field renovations, that needs to be completely stripped and rebuilt, including fencing. The municipal building needs painting, and then various park improvements. If you recall, recent council meetings, there was some folks in the public that say we have very nice parks, but they require a great deal of maintenance. So this is in consideration of those comments.
Yeah, well, I think the big takeaway from that is, right, we have a plan for the roads that we use, a capital project. We also need to take a look at our other assets in the township, just like this building, the fields that are in the township, right? We can't neglect the capital items with that. I think over the last 5 years or so, I don't think it's been a priority, but we got to include that in our discussion. So that's reflected here.
And that's not inconsistent with what the Public Works Director
Yes,
has requested.
absolutely. And there's between the Public Works and there's a field committee that has been established that's working on that and helping to conceptualize some of those plans. So I appreciate, I'm glad to see that in here for sure.
So jumping to equipment and improvements, the command vehicle, as Bob had indicated earlier, this can be purchased with capital. This replaces a 2007 Bronco Flintstone model. It's the one that's got the rusted floor underneath. So
Hey, I got a 1997 pickup truck.
Flintstone model. The traffic speed message trailer is to replace an older unit. This particular trailer, similar to the one we have out there now. We can send messages out there. It's more, it acutely measures your speed. So that's just a replacement for that. The VHF repeater system we talked about with the police department operating budget. The tree chipper for Public Works. This will replace 2 older units. And so Brian, forgot the year what Brian said, but they're ancient. The Kubota tractor, the Public Works, again, you see this working on the ball fields, working on the grounds around the municipal building the other day. This replaces a 1980 unit. The inspections vehicle is requested by construction. Bill seldom uses the one that we currently have. He just feels it's too unsafe to go out there. Uses his own car.
That we can capitalize because it's not a police vehicle.
It's not gonna be a regular car.
Okay.
It's gonna be, SUV.
Okay.
Let's see, municipal building carpeting. From what I found out is that, this has been pretty much an ongoing annual thing where you're going around replacing parts of the carpet throughout the building here. So, a municipal building sound and lighting system, if your eyes aren't twitching every 2 seconds, then, you don't know why we need a new system. The compost turner rehab, a new machine's $300,000. With the one we have now, we could keep going for a little bit longer. This will be replacing some of the paddles, the sprockets, and some of the gears inside the unit itself. The boiler retubing in the municipal building. I mean, this is a Band-Aid fix, but it's going to be a few years before we even get a new heating system. I think somewhere in this budget, I indicate that seriously warrants consideration at some point soon. We are applying for that grant. Perhaps we might get lucky with that and seriously start having a discussion on this.
Yeah, if that grant doesn't come in, we gotta figure out a way to do that, because I've been hearing, since I've been here, we're patching we've been patching the AC, the boiler room, so I don't know how many more patches it has left in its life cycle, so we wanna make sure we're on that, so hopefully that grant comes through. Right, Jim? Great. Sorry to interrupt you there, Jim.
No. Rehab is the water company building. Brian took me out to that. That was an interesting old structure. But what he'd like to do is convert it for equipment. For the winter time, he could put the lawn mowers and the spreaders in there. In the summertime, maybe you could put some of this salt equipment in there, maybe a plow or two. And if you can get high enough, he'd like to put some sort of roof structure where we could then put the sewer department jet back there during the winter months, because oftentimes where it's stored now, down the sewer plant, it freezes up.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's the Friendship Park basketball court, which the mayor mentioned earlier.
Yes.
So that's it for equipment and improvements. Next, we jump into the sewer department capital improvement plan, the blower water system blower replacement project. I think we need here $60,000 additional for engineering and permitting fee. Most of the work had been previously funded, right?
Yeah, I
correct?
remember.
Yeah, right.
I remember that report.
Okay.
Years ago.
Route 130 sewer rehabilitation, phase 1. The total cost is $2 million. So I think we've talked about that before here too.
Yes, and that we're gonna use this is not, that money we're gonna use, right? Or we're gonna use that federal money for that?
Yeah, we could, actually, as soon as we go through this, I'll ask,
Okay,
I have the state forms, I'll have Bob walk us through all that.
okay, great, thanks.
The backflow preventers, this is a federal requirement that we've got 5 pumps that still need to have backflow preventers for the pump stations. The pavement resurfacing down at the water treatment plant, if you have a small car, I would recommend you not visit there at this point in time. You could get swallowed up. Now, the aeration of tanks 1, 2, and 3. This year, we're funding tank 1, all of the engineering for the amount that's reflected there. We still have to do tanks 2 and 3, and they should be done within the first 5 years, within the next 5 years, I should say. The engineering cost would be less because the whole project will be designed with phase 1. The only thing you would need in phases 2 and 3 would be construction engineering, construction management. And that's pretty much the capital.
there any?
So Bob, how about, you want me to pass out
Sure.
the estate sheets and, you can take it away there? Before I get to the funding options, please. Tom, Marlo, Virginia, Lynn. Gary, can I have a post? I'll just pass those down. Well, can I have one? I didn't say one. Thank you.
Memorized.
I'm good.
Thank you. All right, Joe.
Right, well, the only, I will say though that, we met with the capital needs, we met with Jim and, also went over the items that Joe mentioned. So this really just lays it out as to how you're gonna fund for the current year. So if you look at the very first page, some of the items that were talked about are in column 5A, which means they'll be directly in the budget and there won't be any debt associated with that. So we try to use the smaller items and some lower dollar amounts to be direct purchasing so that you don't have to go out for any potential borrowing. All the other projects listed on this first page, you'll see are funded through either 5B, 5D, and 5E. And that's your current year planning. So roughly you're looking to borrow $2.4 million. You'll put down 126.9, which is 5B. And there are grants that are incorporated in the budget of roughly $2.2 million. So when you budget your capital improvement, when you just went over your 14-page document, in the amount for capital improvements was $160,500. So that will cover the $60,500 in column 5A, and will cover $100,000 of the $126.9 in column 5B. The remainder is covered by previous budgets that your capital fund has in capital improvement funds. So you're fully covered with this plan for your required down payment. So when you go out to borrow or you do a bond ordinance, you're required to put 5% down as part of the funding. There's different ways to calculate that. The official way is 5% of what you're going to borrow, but a lot of times it's just 5% of the total cost. So this way you know you have the right amount funded. And you don't need to fund that portion if you're going to have grants that are going to be paying for that. So that's how that number is calculated. And then the balance is what you would go out and issue debt for. So you don't issue the debt until you know when the projects are going to be occurring. So CREMA will work with that to see when the notes would have to be issued. And then again, you could also contemplate going to permanent financing, which would be bonds. So that would be your financial advisor who would help you with that. So that would be, these are all your current capital purchases. And again, those are the sheets that Joe just went over, just a little laid out a little bit differently, and some of them are consolidated.
Yeah.
The last column, column 6, is looking at a 6-year plan. So your first year is 22 and the next 5 years. And these were just sporadic based on prior capital budgets that were submitted and reviewed. The next page is items for your sewer utility capital. And again, these were items that we went over with Jim as to how to phase in some of these improvements. And, you know, you look at it and you say, the first column, 5A, is a lot larger than the previous pages. Well, you're utilizing the available surplus in the sewer fund to help fund some of these rather than go out for the borrowings. So that is why. So we're trying to utilize, in conjunction with everybody's discussion, the surplus and to use it wisely without using all of it. So that is a little bit half of what the amount of surplus is. And one thing I wanted to point out is your Route 130 sewer rehabilitation. You'll see there's nothing planned in the current year for that. It's for future years. Over the last 2 capital budgets, 20 and 21, you've reserved some monies and you put in the budget those that amount. So it is being funded. It's just now it's just a payment of it. So you've already funded half of it, and this would be the other half to be funded in future years. And that's essentially all the discussions that were had put on the state document, so this will be the public document that goes out. So this way you have an understanding of how it's laid out. The next few pages really are just taking that information and showing you over the years. So if you look at your current budget on sheet 40C, you're looking to do $4.8 million worth of capital projects for 2022. And that is consistent with the information that we just looked at on the first page under columns 5A. And then the last column, which is column 6, is all the 5B, C, D, E, and F's added together. So again, it's just giving the public a viewpoint as to what you're doing this year and what you have planned for the following 5 years. And the same thing is done on the sewer. But the sewer, I believe we only had the 1 year. Actually, I probably didn't even fill that in. So when I finish the state document, I will fill that in. I guess I didn't do that part when I sent it to Joe. But again, it's in conjunction with your overall capital plan that Joe and Jim put together and then reviewed it with us.
Awesome. Thanks, Bob. So is there any questions regarding the capital budget? No. I like the capital budget. Good. Cool.
And this takes into account, any road work that's being done, by others, like water and all that.
Yeah, I mean, that's being done, right, Jim, but that's not, wouldn't touch our books.
The answer is yes. The projects slated for roads, other than Haynesville Road, are projects directly related to work New Jersey American Water is doing, and almost in conjunction with us. We're doing certain improvements in advance of New Jersey American Water paving, and then for Notre Dame Drive and Court, we'll be doing the entire project, and they'd be reimbursing us for what they would have spent on doing restoration. This way, you don't have piecemeal out there, you have one complete project.
Okay, great. So with that, if there's no other questions, that would conclude the 2022 budget discussion. Unless Jim, you
I did
wanna-
just realize, in the budget numbers I gave you for the reimbursement from New Jersey American Water, I put 75,000, but they tentatively agreed to 85.
Well, there's the
You keep spending that 10.
Okay. Did you, I have an email, but I'll send it to you. We gotta work out an agreement.
Okay, all right, so what did I have in there, 75, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
I think that based on the numbers I saw, it looks
Yeah.
like about 54%
Yeah,
of the road cost is being absorbed by others instead of the taxpayers.
Absolutely, yeah. It's much credit to Jim. Jim orchestrated that for a couple of years, so appreciate that, Jim.
And they want to do more.
Good, as long as they strike another deal.
Yeah,
It's a good deal for
they're,
us.
Jim, they've been reaching out for us for our moratorium list and future road programs, because there's more work that they want to do in town.
That's good. Great. If you could just stay on top of that, Jim, that'd be awesome.
Virginia saying, are they doing the board work?
I know.
Yeah, they're doing a lot of work over there.
I think the chestnut.
All right, so with that, I think that wraps up our budget discussion, right, Joe?
Very much. I just like to thank Bob, because I really jumped in right in the middle of things. I was doing things in February, March, that I probably wouldn't be normally doing in November and December. But thank you, Bob and Mike and Karina, many thanks. There were a couple of times I walked in Karina's office for information. I know she was reaching for that stapler. Throw at me, but thank you very much. So, thank you. Thank you to the mayor and the council for their patience too. Thank you.
Well, thank you guys, appreciate it. Joe, thank you. I know you're only supposed to be here 3 days a week, but my understanding is you're bright and early at 7 o'clock today and multiple times a week. So we do appreciate that, jumping in and getting that done. And thanks Bob and Karima and everybody who helped get it through. You're welcome to come back anytime, Joe, and do another budget. If you want to stay, all right? Thank you guys, appreciate it. All right, so with that, we good to close that discussion?
Yes, and we're going to say.
Yes, thank you very much for all your help.
7 a.m. gets here pretty quick, so.
You can just stay for a couple more minutes. Okay. You only get another 10 minutes. All right, great. So with that, we'll go to our reports. We heard a lot from our interim township administrator, Joe Bolina, so if there's anything else you want to add for us.
Not at all.
Okay,
That-
great.
Okay, okay,
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Next up is our township clerk, Jamie Egger.
No, I have nothing for tonight.
Thanks, Jamie. Next up is our mayor, Mayor Castro.
Oh, of course I do. Hey, I'll try and be brief. I'd like to send a special thank you to County Commissioner Dan O'Connell, Delran resident, thank you very much, for his help, and Joe Brickley, who's the county engineer. We had residents reach out about their newly acquired road that used to be our road, Hartford Road, right at the intersection of Hartford Corners. We reached out and said, hey, now that it's your road, could you help us out here? And they were able to pave that section that was really the worst section. And we've already heard from several residents who were really happy with the fast response. So thanks to Commissioner O'Connell. Also like to mention to the residents that if you visit the township website, we do have information about the those folks who had sewer bill adjustment claims if they had a bad leak and they fixed it, and that may have altered their sewer bill, but the deadline to submit for an adjustment is April 30th. And finally, now that we've resolved things, I'm really excited to be able to finally share the video of the Carly Lloyd event with the residents of Delran. We had originally planned to do that. It was a great night, and we were so excited for everyone to see it. Prior to the onslaught of open requests, we had originally wanted to do this a long time ago, but once that process began, we really kind of had no choice but to act on the advice of our former council. Now we have a new council who is advising that we can share that video, and we'll be able to do that. For those folks who did not attend, the video was of a special once-in-a-lifetime event, and we're happy that we'll be able to share that. So that's my report.
Thank you, Mayor. Next up is our reports from our interim solicitor, Eileen Fahey, who's joining us remotely on a conference line. Eileen, do you have any report for us in public?
Good evening, Council President. No report this evening.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Next up, we have our engineer, CME Associates, Jim Witkowski. Jim, I know you have a resolution for us, right?
Thank you. I was hoping to walk on. Joe and I spoke today, and I mentioned to Tyler, the DOT has contacted us. They're doing a project on Route 130 at Haynesville Road at 130 and Chester at 130. It's one project. It's pedestrian safety improvements. They've been talking about this for a long time. I don't know if I brought it up to the council before, but recently, in the last few months, they sent us 2 correspondence. One was to the sewer department. They are looking for us to enter into a shared service agreement with them. It was originally because there's a sewer manhole that's within the sidewalk at one of the corners, the diner corner, that needs to be adjusted, and they wanted us to do it with our forces, and it's such a minor amount of work that need to get done. We just want their contractor to do it. So the shared services agreement was for them to reimburse us to do it with our contractor, but it would be a waste of time and resources. And so, but we're still going to sign the agreement in case that there's any inspection fees that are generated from like either CME or even in-house personnel we can recapture with them. We might not it might not result in anything, but it'd be benefit you just to have the form signed in case we do want to recapture an hour or two of cost, down the road. And the other one is they need an easement from the township, in a temporary easement to do the work to replace the sidewalk. The township owns the property, I'm going to say on the east side of Route 130 in between Dunkin' Donuts and the Swedes Run. And they need about a sliver of land, 1 foot wide, about like 10 foot long in one spot. And same thing, 1 foot wide by like 40 feet long by closer to the bridge where the Swedes Run crosses 130. It's temporary easement only, it's not permanent, and they just need to do it so they can replace the sidewalks there, and some minor regrading. They appraised it through a state certified appraisal. They're offering, I think, $1,500 for it. I recommend you grant them the easement. There's options you have to do your own appraisal and negotiate more money. I don't see you ever getting any more. It's temporary in nature, so I would just recommend you authorize execution of that easement agreement. So I would imagine you're gonna need a resolution for both to authorize the execution for that easement. And I'll send over all the documents to the solicitor, because I have them all. There's each one is about 100 pages of documents that it's crazy just for two minor things, how much things have to be signed. But I'll send over to the solicitor so she can review everything, and then if she's okay, we can sign them and move forward with your blessing.
Okay. Do you want us, we can do a resolution tonight.
That would be great. if
Rather
you-
get it
if you
started.
want.
I think in the package, there were two separate actions.
Yeah,
One
one-
was for,
The shared service agreement, and the other,
for the
which is in itself 100 pages.
yeah.
There's 4 copies of an agreement that's 20-something pages long and everything else. And then there's the easement agreement docs, which is another 100 pages, 4 copies of the actual deeds and stuff like that. And so we'll organize it, share it for proper legal review and everything, and then
We'll
move
do the
forward.
two
Execution.
resolutions.
Yeah, they're chopping at the bit, I think, because the project's been delayed such a long time, and now they finally got all the stuff in order, and they want to get started.
Yeah, there's no reason to delay. So we'll do two resolutions, one for the shared service and then one for the temporary easement.
Yes.
So I'll ask for resolution 2022-66 to authorize pending attorney and administrative review, the shared service agreement with the DOT.
Yes. And the authorizing the execution, well, that's the first resolution.
Yeah, we'll do the easement separately. Can I get a motion in a second?
Motion, Tom Lyon.
Second.
Jamie, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Jenny?
Aye.
Ms. Pareo?
Aye.
Mr. Lyon?
Aye.
Mr. Burrell?
Aye. The ayes have it. The resolution's adopted. And next up, Jim, is resolution 2022-67 is authorizing the temporary easement with the DOT.
Correct.
Okay, get a motion in a second?
So moved.
Second.
Council, excuse me, Council President,
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm trying to understand, this is a motion to approve the temporary easement?
Yes, pending your review and administrative review.
Oh, true, review, okay, because the easement itself will require a motion.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. Thank you for that. We'll have your office prepare that. Hopefully they'll be all right with a
Okay.
a
It is
resolution.
what it is, yeah.
Okay, great.
listening to her, she'll be very happy to see a resolution.
Yeah,
You know, that the ordinance can be forthcoming then.
yeah. So was there a motion on that?
Virginia made the motion. Was there a second?
And second.
Lynn. Okay, this is for resolution 2022-67. Jamie, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Jenny?
Aye.
Ms. Pareo?
Aye.
Mr. Lyon?
Aye.
Mr. Burrell?
Aye. The ayes have it. Resolution's adopted. Eileen and Jim can work on whatever's needed to get that through. Thank you,
Yes,
guys.
Eileen, I will forward you some documents this week.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. Anything else, Jim?
Lastly, I just we've been in communication with the contractors for the 2021 and 2020 road program. They're gonna be mobilizing soon to complete their punch list work. Good. Hopefully within the next few weeks.
And I think you sent something over on Baylor yesterday, that Jim is gonna
Yes.
add that to the punch list.
Yeah.
Okay. And you reached that residents aware of that?
We're gonna.
I didn't call them yet.
No, no,
I'll call them.
You'll call them over.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Maybe make sure that's not a pervasive, there's some cracking on the,
It was like scuffing, really. They
Yeah.
scratched, they rubbed against the curb with the milling machine. And
so just make sure that's done the right way,
Yeah.
right? We'll double check and make sure they're not the only ones who noticed it. Okay, great. Well, good, Jim?
Yes, unless you have any questions for me.
Any questions for Jim?
I did.
Go ahead.
When's Chester and who we paid?
They want to mobilize in April, and so I'm gonna fine tune the schedule. But as you mentioned earlier to me, spring break, we're gonna try to hopefully line it up with spring break for the school. So
Good.
that will avoid, yeah.
That was
Yeah, good catch.
awesome.
All right, next up, we have reports from members of council. First up, Councilwoman Virginia Pareo.
No report this evening, thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Councilman Marlo Smith.
Yes, just wanted to make a quick mention, spring, folks like to do some projects, sometimes people have fences and things like that, just make sure that you properly get all the, utilities marked before you dig, because you never know what's gonna be. And ready for it.
Okay. Next up, we have Councilman Lynn Jenny. Councilman?
You're not gonna have I don't know, Tom, and you were gonna mention it, but, I've spoken with Debbie, and, The green team is, planning a community garden at the Sweets Run, by the swim club. And they're asking anyone interested to, communicate with them. I believe it's on Facebook, so if anyone's interested in that, they should reach out. There will be water, and the question was asked.
Yeah, that's, Jim's office has to eventually do a study and look at that and conceptual plan, so it won't be this year, but, you know, it's definitely on our to-do list for sure. Hopefully we can come up with.
They were asking for people who are interested, I guess maybe they're
Yeah,
measuring interest.
they're trying to measure the interest and see if it's worthwhile, and it seems, my understanding is that there's a lot of people who are interested, which is
Other
good.
than that, there's no other.
Okay, thanks for messaging that, appreciate it. Thank you. Next up is Vice President of Council, Mr. Tom Lyons. Vice President.
Council President, I also wanted to mention, they did a great job on Hartford Road. I was actually there today. They were ripping it up. They milled it. They didn't do, a patch job. They actually ripped it up, did a great job, and it's nice and smooth. So hats off to everybody. I mean, I know Joe got on that, Dan, everybody, so, that was really good. Also, there was a sewer, leak on Springcrest, and, that actually was a bigger job than originally anticipated, so it took a little bit longer. Got some, feedback from some residents, couldn't get in the driveways or whatnot. I went out there, I talked to the contractor, they were finishing it up that day, and it's not paved yet because they're letting everything settle, because it was a sinkhole from the leak, and it was a big project. They're letting everything settle, and then they are gonna pave it. So anybody that might be listening on Springcrest, it's not going to stay that way. It will get paved and get there. Also, Jim, where we did the project on Grand, the road calming and everything, there's some erosion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that, you know, we did plant grass and stuff, but there's some significant erosion now. Maybe we need to take a look at that, whether it's from DPW or whatnot, on the park side.
Yeah, the Black Rock is aware of that, and they're gonna go
Okay.
out there and continue to, they're on the maintenance bond for, we actually didn't close them out yet, but we're about to close them out and then put them on maintenance bond, so they'll be responsible for that for
Okay.
over a year.
Good.
But we've known, yeah, Brian mentioned that to me already, and Black Rock's get out there and keep touching it up until it gets speed stabilized.
Perfect. And that's it.
Good. Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it. For my report, quick thing, Jamie, you want the spring,
Yeah, I don't have a calendar with me, but the cleanup days are coming up. I believe it's Wednesday, is it?
it's a couple of days, right?
21st maybe of April, so it's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday from 7 to 7, and Saturday from 7 to 5. Public Works, you can bring pretty much anything here to drop off, with the exception of asbestos.
Yes.
Didn't Public Works already select the dates or?
Yeah, no, I think it's
The
starting,
20th of April is a
Okay.
Wednesday.
okay,
Yeah.
so Wednesday, April 20th, so Wednesday, Thursday,
Thursday,
Friday,
Friday.
7 to 7, Saturday, 7 to 5.
The 20th to the 22nd.
I saw a sign around town, so can we get that on the website
Sure.
and social media, please, would be
Sure,
great.
it'll be up tonight or tomorrow morning.
Great, awesome. All right, and then, want to thank everybody again for their hard work with the budget, and it would be remiss if I didn't mention, there is obviously a settlement agreement here with Mr. Duff. I think we made the right decision, but I just want to say that this highlights and demonstrates the importance of our township solicitor and having someone who specializes in Oprah requests, or at least has a good knowledge of it moving forward. So as we seek a new solicitor, which closes tomorrow, right?
Right.
And will be considered at our next meeting. Just keep that in the back of our mind, that these decisions do matter and they do impact us financially. So with that, I believe that's all of our reports. So we'll go into public comments. So I'll ask for a motion to open the floor to public comment.
Motion, Tom Lyon.
Thank you, Tom. In a second. Tom, you still have that Zoom, Tom Lyon, where you say your name.
Far away from the
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. We are now open for public comments. So for those folks who are here with us tonight, there's some ground rules that if you wish to speak, please raise your hand and you will be recognized. At that time, you may approach the microphone and state your name and address for the record. All remarks should be addressed to council. An individual speaker is allotted 5 minutes of time, and all statements are made All statements that are made are part of the public record, both written, video, and audio recorded, and cannot be redacted or retracted after the fact. So if you're interested in speaking, please raise your hand. Speaking. State your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening, Tony Egan, 108 Shelby Lane. We're talking about money for the budget. Maybe, we might wanna put some money aside for better audio equipment for these live meetings.
We beat you to it. It's already in there. Yep.
Okay.
You're preaching to the choir on that one.
Including those.
Yes, sir. That's included.
And also maybe add some, security camera footage in light of the Oprah request that I put in. You know, looking at your security camera footage, it's pretty poor. You know, for your safety and the safety of the employees that work here, you know, I think more cameras are necessary and better quality, just, you know.
I had a conversation with the chief of police about that a couple weeks ago. He plans to propose it next budget cycle.
Good, okay, good. Another thing, we're talking about the state's gonna be working on intersections on Haynes Mill and Chester.
At Route 130.
Everyone 130.
Okay, that's pedestrians, safety stuff?
Yes.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I just wanna make a note, I've said it before, years ago, but when you guys leave tonight, take notice of how dark Route 130 is. The intersections are one thing, but the length of the highway on either direction of Chester Avenue, it's pretty dark. So, and it's, you know, if anybody's walking along Route 130 or crossing, jumping the Jersey barriers, it's dangerous. So is there any way of like adding more lighting to the highway part instead of the intersections?
I'm afraid it's a state highway, right? So it's not up to us, but I'll write a note and see if we can send a note up to some folks.
I mean, I know
upstairs.
Cinnaminson, I don't want to compare Delran to Cinnaminson, but Cinnaminson, you know, put in those nice lights. Not saying that we should do
Yeah.
that, but how did something like that happen?
I don't know. Jim, do you have something?
Down by the shopping center.
I
where
think
they
it was
have
a part of the
Rugby Battle,
development.
right?
Yeah, pretty much from the Pennsauken border to the cemetery, they put in those Victorian looking lights.
Was it part of a development that was along the frontage of Route 130?
Nope,
I
from
mean,
the cemetery to Pennsauken.
We'll take a note.
I know the engineer for Pennsauken, for Cinnaminson. I know
Let's see what-
I even know the mayor, so I can ask them what they did over there, how that came about.
Jim will track down some
All right, I
information.
mean,
See what
I
we can
think,
do.
you know, a lot of times I go to work late at night and early in the morning, and it's just really dark.
Mhm.
That's all. I don't know if any other residents have noticed what I have. The township E code, it's like been a pet peeve of mine for a while. 12-312A, parking of commercial and recreational vehicles. No person or persons belonging to the same household within the township of Delran shall park or allowed to remain standing more than one vehicle with a gross weight equal to or less than 9,000 pounds, having a commercial registration or utilize for any commercial purposes on any residential street under the jurisdiction of the township of Delran or portion thereof between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. There's a lot of white vans, commercial contracting vans, company vans, like big companies like Verizon, PSE&G, parking on the streets. They're not supposed to be parking on the streets. I personally feel, and I've talked to other people, that it makes the town, look shabby and cluttered, and, it makes it difficult for other people, like, driving down the streets. And, now I talked to the code enforcement officer, and he says it's a police matter. So, why,
Is that,
my question is, how come we are not enforcing this law?
it's an administrative, I don't know
Yeah,
if it's a
we'll have to
police.
check with the police department on that, police chief, sir,
Okay,
okay?
how am I
It,
going
it may be,
give an answer?
what's the code section again? Can you repeat?
Sure. It is 12-312A.
Right, it may be a zoning section, which,
It's under traffic.
I'll tell you what, leave your name and,
yeah,
leave your name and number.
Okay.
we'll look into it and see what's, sometimes it's not always as, it reads one way, but the section it's in and all sorts of things
Right,
have
right.
an
I mean,
impact. So.
like I said, I talked to the code enforcement officer. He says it's been a problem for years, and people have come to him asking him how come he's not enforcing it. And there was an issue between him and I guess the police. It's a police matter.
No, we'll take a look.
Police are supposed to be handling it. This is per Ted.
Gotcha, okay.
All right, last item. In light of the recent release of the video that I requested on the Oprah request showing the security camera footage in the lobby of the township building, November 9th, 2021 meeting, Mr. Jenny accused Mr. Duff and Dusko of getting within 2 inches of Mr. Jenny's face and threatening him. The video footage clearly shows that accusation from Mr. Jenny to be not true. And it actually shows them walking through a door and talking to each other. That's what it looks like to me and other people. The video, numerous witnesses say it never happened. So does Mr. Jenny, does Mr. Jenny want to go on a record and apologize to Mr. Duff and Mr. Dusko at this time for making that accusation?
No, sir, I stand by my comments. In fact, I know that somebody even posted the fact they were there, and he did, yes, Mrs. Wolfen, and that he did run up using a loud voice towards me at the door. And on the video, I didn't see any of that because it doesn't show the doorway when we exited. And he followed us down the sidewalk. So, no, there's no apology. It's exactly what I said happened. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
No problem, thank you, take care. Any other questions or comments from the public? Ms. Littleton? I got that.
Barb Littleton, resident here in Delran, don't want to release my address. I have a question that maybe the engineer can answer. The new construction, are they gonna have sidewalks over there? Because the kids
The answer is yes.
are going across there and heading to the houses. It's
Yeah.
really dangerous. They're walking.
The answer is yes,
along. Yeah. So they are?
So for Chester Ave development, the Holy Cross development,
Yes.
they are responsible, the developer is responsible for the sidewalks in along their frontage.
Okay.
And then the township secured a grant from the state to pay for sidewalks along the, what we call the out parcels, the residential, the 5 or 6 residential homes, to connect what the developer's putting in, all the way down to the shopping center.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, someone had been going by when school got out, and there was a couple of kids out there, and she was really worried about their safety, because there's no crossing guard right now, and, they're staying on that side of the street, so there is a crossing guard to go across, but they would have to cross, go up, and then come back across where there is no crossing guard, so they were just a little bit worried there. Did have a question, the resolution that you guys passed for the additional funding for CME Associates, is there some information we can get on what that funding was for?
Jim, do you have that?
For the planning services?
Yeah, that's affordable housing, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
for
the township has an affordable housing obligation that's handled by your township planner, which is a position that CME holds. And at this point, it services relative to continuing to finalize the settlement agreement with, between the township and Fair Share Housing. They've reached a tentative agreement, but there's conditions to that agreement that the township should show that they have met. It's just a continuation of those services throughout this year to work with the court their special manufactured housing until it's fully resolved. And that's all funded out of the COA trust fund. That's correct.
Okay. I was just wondering for myself, where that came from. We talked about the Chester Ave issues. Thank you so much, Virginia.
And they are scheduled to pave the week of spring break, the 18th to 22nd.
So they're just gonna repave, they're not gonna come out and just, because we were thinking that at some point they were just going to take a little bit off the top.
Correct. They're what we
They're
call
repaving.
resurface. They take off 2 inches and then put back 2 inches, yes.
Okay. Mr. Jimmy, I was out there with the video, and I just wanna put, my 2 cents. I think Scott was speaking loudly because he was upset that Mr. Burrell was not wearing his mask. And then you asked us to either exit the building or put the mask on. He did not get within 2 inches of your face at any time. So I was there, 7 other people were there. The only time he came close to your face is when everyone was walking through the door, and we can see that in the video. And I did put that out there for the public, but I definitely want to make a correction. And me personally, I think the events of the evening made the exaggeration happen, but I think you sort of exaggerated in what you said. And if you really felt your security was at stake there, you really need to stay out of politics, because I mean, these things, we've seen fights on the Senate floor. I mean, they get pretty gruesome.
Yeah, perhaps you're right. I think, Barbara, the truth of it is, when the Councilman Lyon and I were leaving, we were going through the door. He rushed up to the door yelling, and he was right in my face. Now, 2 inches, 6 inches, I don't know, but you know what? It startled me when I was leaving the door. I never said I felt like
Because I was right there with you.
I never felt I was going to be attacked. I never said that. I think that was created by Mr. Duff. But he did approach me with a loud voice,
Yes, he did.
right in my face, startled me. I turned, I mean, he was right there. So, you know, maybe my perception. However, then we went out the door, and then he followed us down the sidewalk about 20 feet till Mr. Duff asked him to come back.
I know at that point, you were a good 3, 4, 5 feet away from me.
Right.
And I think Mr. Duff was calling him back for another reason.
No, it was
But
because he was chasing us,
he wasn't
mocking
chasing.
our clothing. Well,
He could have been following you.
he
but
was
wasn't
following
chasing.
us.
Yeah.
It's semantics. He was
Yeah.
following us. We were walking, he was mocking our clothing, and we just decided to shut up and keep going.
So I understand where you're coming from, but at least hopefully you can understand.
I
where
do,
we're coming
I understand.
Yeah. And that would be another, one of the cameras that, Tony had talked about, having one in front for your safety, as well as
Everyone's.
my safety.
You never know these days.
I'm gonna wrap it up pretty quickly. I wanted to ask the mayor a question, because you spoke about the video, and that you're gonna release the video so that the public could see it. I know in your comments, you said that you were thinking of releasing that video when we first did it, but something happened that caused you not to release the video. What was that? Was it Mr. Duff's Oprah request for the video, or was it something else that caused you not to release the video?
Well, in the environment that was created, we were becoming very cautious about doing anything regarding the event. So we just held off. I just held off. We will release, you know, the produced version of the video, so that everybody can see and enjoy the event.
Yeah,
That's all.
so it just makes an appearance there, and this is an innuendo, and it is such a supposition. I'll throw it out there for everyone, but it makes the appearance that there was something else happening, that we didn't release that video.
No.
And we were intending to, and then we didn't. So I just want to throw that out there.
Right.
Those are the perceptions that can happen. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
everyone.
No problem, appreciate it. So any other comments from members of the public? Please raise your hand. Last call, seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to close the floor.
Motion, Tom Lyon.
Second.
Lynn, all in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Our public comment is now closed. I'll now. These are resolutions. Yeah. Next up, we'll ask for resolution 2022-65, authorizing executive session to discuss the following personnel matter. Can I get a motion in a second?
I make a motion.
I'll second.
And Jamie, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Jenny?
Aye.
Ms. Pareo?
Aye.
Mr. Lyon?
Aye.
Mr. Burrell?
Aye. Ayes have it, the resolution carries. At this time, we'll take a 5-minute recess and then enter into executive session. Thank you. we're gonna go back on?
Turn your mic, is on.
Oops, sorry.
No, no, you're good, you weren't on.
Need this.
All right, the video's up in there?
Yes.
Okay. This time, we're good, we good to go back on the record? You good?
Yep.
All right, we'll go back on the record. We are out of our executive session, now back in our normal session. There was no action to be taken, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, Tom Lane.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
That's the